Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're going to finish chapter 23 of the Gospel of Matthew today as we continue our study of this Gospel. And this informs the entire chapter. We understand the tone of voice that Jesus is using. It's like in Philippians chapter 3 when the Apostle Paul is making his case against the prevailing culture, and he says there are people that are following, this hedonistic lifestyle, and it sounds like he's standing on top of a mountain with his eyes on fire, with his hands in the air pronouncing, judgment, and he is talking about judgment, but we mistake his tone of voice because he says, "I write this now, even in tears." Even in tears. And Jesus ends this series of woes by weeping for Jerusalem and saying, "All I ever wanted to do was to mother hen you." Matthew chapter 23, verses 37 through 39. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her, how often I wanted to gather your children together the way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were unwilling. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate. For I say to you, from now on you shall not see me until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." There's so much here. Let's notice, first of all, Jesus is speaking as God. He just is. He's speaking as God. All I ever wanted to do. It encompasses, he's standing in the temple with the crowds, and he's encompassing all of the history of Judaism, which he's just invoked in those last woes. He's encompassing all the history of Judaism, and he says, all I ever wanted to do. Jesus has been a human for about 33 years. He's speaking as God, as divine, in talking about his relationship from the very beginning with his people. So he's speaking as God, and he's in the midst of Jerusalem, speaking to Jerusalem, not speaking to a geographic location, but the gravitational center and the beating heart of Judaism, which at this time is at its core corrupt, and it just is corrupt, and Jesus is weeping over Jerusalem because of this. So he's speaking as God, and we also want to see that he describes himself as God, as a mother hen. It's a favorite phrase of David's in the Psalms, and David mentions it 3 times to describe God's relationship to David and God's relationship to his people, in Psalm 36, Psalm 57, and Psalm 61. And it's interesting that chronologically, I believe the earliest use of that description of God as a mother hen is found in David's own great grandfather, in Boaz, because that's how he describes Ruth. You have turned to Yahweh, and you've huddled under his wings for protection, and describes God as a mother hen. It's also used elsewhere in the Psalms and in the Old Testament, but it's David who uses the phrase in the songs, and it's Boaz, chronologically seeming to me it was the first in Scripture to use it, and so we have this. David often describes God as maternal. One of his late Psalms, Psalm 131, he describes himself as a weaned child on his mother's lap, and that's what his relationship with God is like. God is he, and he always describes himself with a male pronoun, always. But he transcends human gender. We have to know that. He's bigger than that. And his love for us encompasses not only paternal love, but maternal love. God is our parent, and he loves us in the fullness of a parent's love, whether that includes paternal love and maternal love. And that's how Jesus is describing himself and his feelings for the people he's just been talking to. And he says, your house is left desolate. And it is. It is left desolate because it's only a few decades until the Romans are going to destroy the temple, and it will never be rebuilt again, ever in the history of humanity and the history of the planet. It is never going to be rebuilt again. God is going to destroy Old Testament Judaism with the iron fist of the Roman Empire so that a Jew can never be, from then on, an Old Testament Jew the way you and I can be New Testament Christians. And it didn't have to be that way. But their choices have consequences. And that last quote, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, that's from Psalm 118, which has been referred to already twice in this last week. And it's a messianic psalm. And he's saying, until you can see me as the Messiah, you're not going to see me at all. It's not. We're going to pick up with chapter 24 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.